That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe OTAs, but you hear the dun dun. That means the Duval dive is getting into the mix. Of course, welcome in. I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game, for this week's edition of the Duval dive. But listen, I'm going to be honest. You're not going to hear a lot from me. I'm not the boots on the ground. I'm not the one there on the scene. My man, my personal champion, Travis Holmes, Big Cat Country, was the man who was at OTAs, and we'll be talking about that plenty. What's going on there, champion?
Hey man, I'm doing well, living it up, man.
So listen, I gotta say, I glad you went Jersey today, because one of the topics, I don't want to call it fun, but it was certainly off the field, and somebody was getting laid back. I don't know if they had their mind on their money or their money on their mind or what, but if anybody hasn't seen the Brandon McManus headlines by now, I'm going to have to get you to crawl out from under that rock. I don't want to get too deep into it because there's still information unfolding. There's still a lot going on. And frankly, I'm paranoid that I'm going to say the wrong thing. But for people who are braver than me, like our friend, my personal champion, Travis Holmes here, as well as Anthony Wiggins, we know him as T. Wiggs from Locked On Jaguars. Check out that episode coming up where Travis has a little conversation with T. Wiggs on his show there. So check that out. Getting into the McManus thing. I don't want to give away all. Oh, wait, excuse me. Bing. But I don't want to get into all the too much of the details there too, because like I said, they're still unfolding.
Right.
Alleged misconduct by former Jaguar kicker Brandon McManus. Without getting too much into the allegations, like I have questions anyway. Like, unless it's an edible, how does one get weed onto a plane and then let that puff in a giant metal tube? I'm still working on that.
That was a weird thing for me, and we didn't get into the specifics of that. And again, it was a 40-minute pod with T Wig on Locked On Jaguar, so definitely take a listen to that. Duval Devout, but we didn't get into that specific part of it, which I thought was real interesting because weed is, I believe, still legal over there, illegal over there, and it's also federally illegal over here. So international flights with weed on, I don't even know where you get that from at that point.
Right. And well, you know, where,
If
what,
true.
where allegedly, let's cover ourselves again, allegedly, right. And I'll say this, like with some of it is dependent on where the plane is and all this. It gets real dicey, especially when you're dealing in international law like that. And or maybe the FAA regulations or deal with the origin of the flight, or I don't know. I don't know those details. It gets really hairy, but we'll ask this one overarching question so people could go to that episode of Locked On Jaguars with T Wig, bing, where you were present there. But like the impact on the team could be what?
That's the fun part. And obviously I do mean that sarcastically.
I'm gonna air quote fun.
Because that's the headline. Everybody's talking about the McManus thing and everything else, and then we started getting into the additional items like the potential use of marijuana and the potential alcohol being on board. And that's truly the walkaway headlines from this is any additional investigation that may come about because of these claims is the part where the NFL could levy some sort of punishments, and what that may be, that's still up in the air. But when the NFL sent the memo to all 32 teams last year, 11 months ago, they stated there would be significant punishment, significant, their word choice. We don't know what that means. I don't know if that's draft picks. I don't know if that's a limit to your free agent spending. I don't know if that's just a fine to the team. I have no idea, and none of us do, because we would be the potential first team to quote unquote publicly be caught breaking that rule after they sent that message out. So it's like if you have children, I don't want to give you a spanking, but if you make me into a public liar, then I'm sorry, you kind of forced my hand here. And unfortunately, if anything comes out of any future depositions or any discovery within that lawsuit that gives evidence to some of these claims, that could result in potentially some significant damages where forcing the NFL to give the team a spanking. And that kind of is worrisome, at least.
That's a fine analogy, by the way. Yeah, no, the point you make about setting a precedent is actually, for me, what I think is scariest for the Jags, because if you've seen Listen, there was a point in time when I called Roger Goodell the Ginger Hammer for what he did to, but I said it, but what he did to the New Orleans Saints bounty gate. Right now, is this that? No, but I have a feeling that as the first offenders, when I hear significant punishment, I hear more than a fine. But obviously, because I'll put it this way: the last thing the Jags needs is picks being revoked from their draft. But
at least we added 2 to the to the inventory for 2025 with the trade. So there you go.
That's an awfully optimistic take for a guy who has a "this team makes me drink" T-shirt, which now has a completely different meaning with some of what was alleged on that flight. But I digress.
I can't even wear it now. That's dope. That's good point.
Did they make you drink or did they allow you to drink?
Did they give you the drinks? This is the question. Wow, that's an interesting take, man.
No, I'm just making jokes. That's not let the record show that. That is all for the sake of parody. Please do not sue me. No, listen. But anyways, enough of that. Enough of that particular piece. Let's go ahead and jump over to OTAs. And Travis, I know it's the Underwear Olympics, as you affectionately referred to it. I don't want to hit you on a technicality. Well, that's the draft, but not OTAs. But I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to nitpick over that like some people nitpick over diction on Twitter. Inside joke. But with all that in mind, 5 tweet replies, Travis. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, check it out on Twitter. Another one where Travis and I do our brotherly bickering on Twitter.
And I won exactly. Anyways, yeah. So let's keep that moving. Let's keep that moving. So yeah, OTAs were great.
Of course, the thing that's proliferating all over Twitter right after you read Travis beefing with me is Brian Thomas getting the long pass from Trevor Lawrence. I think I first saw it from Jamal St. Cyr, and then it began to proliferate. Listen, just walk us through what you've seen from him. I know you were excited about him after OTAs for the first go around. I mean, chemistry developing, all that. How do you feel?
I mean, you're seeing what you expect and what you'd hope to see from a rookie receiver. I might even say you're seeing a little bit more than you would expect. And again, it's a little bit harder. I want to be fair to the DBs because I am a DB. I'm going to always be fair to the DBs.
Is that a Donovan Darius jersey? I'm trying.
It's a little no. So this is an old Ramsey jersey, but
okay, close enough.
The last great DB, in my opinion. But yeah, so BTJ had 2 touchdowns in the red zone. He ran a magnificent route against Tyson Campbell. I can't tell you what the route was. Let's just say it was a really dang good route. If you close your eyes, and look at his lower body, you think it was Calvin Ridley, maybe even better. Where he ended up scoring a touchdown with probably 4 or 5 yards of space to work with. And then he later ran another route that everybody was like, oh, from the sidelines. But then the catch went right off of his hands because he was trying to get both feet in bounds at the sideline. So it's like, oh man, if you would have caught that would have been on film. So no one's seen it unless you were there. But because he dropped it, they're not going to put it out there. It's a drop pass at the end of the day. But if he were to catch it, it's the and one mixtape of routes. So yeah, that's how Brian Thomas is doing right now. And if he continues to do what he's doing and continues to stack these practices like he's been stacking them, the route running is the biggest takeaway for his game that I'm just taking away from OTAs. With or without pads, that's something that's transferable to the rest of the season. That's something that I was looking forward to seeing, and I've seen it, and it's better than I expected it to be. And yeah, I'm good, bro.
Well, I'll put it this way. This adds further credence to some of the theories that I've said and written about on Jaguar Report. Bing! About Gabe Davis. We've said this together, actually, that Gabe Davis was never meant to actually replace Calvin Ridley.
Right.
But I'm not going to say replace, but I mean, in the article I wrote about Mega, bam! Sorry, let's try that again. Bam!
Make ETN great again. Let's go.
I'm using that graphic as much as I can, Zach. Deal with it, okay? Shouts to Zach Schultz, Jaguar Report. But with all that, I also added in part of what'll make NTN great again is BTJ stretching the field, and I think in that way is where he's
Oh yeah.
definitely gonna replace Ridley in that way. If what you're saying
Oh,
translates to the
yeah,
field.
he's better than Ridley in that way. And that's not me. That's not a knock on Ridley, but we know his game. Like he's not good at the contested catches. He's fast, but he struggles getting off the line. And that's the only piece that that remains to be seen as far as BTJ is concerned. When they get the pad zone, when the DBs are actually able to cheat a little bit. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. That's what my DB coach used to always say. So yeah, get your little hands underneath the shoulder pads here and try to get keep them inside. So once
You
we
gonna
get the
talk to an
choke,
O linemon about pad
yeah,
work,
yeah,
son?
yeah. So once
God,
you get the
what's
sh-
wrong
on
with
you
you?
once they get the pad zone and we can see what the DBs can lay hands, and if he can show us that he has that ability to consistently get off the line without struggling there, I would I would officially say that at that point he is better than Calvin Ridley at extending the field as far as getting vertical, as far as stretching the defense, and he's an actual solid blocker, which is college film supports. So yeah, I'm here for that, man.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you brought up that point too. That also leans into the mega article where I talk about Gabe Davis as a blocker as well on Jaguar Report. Bing! By the way, real quick as an aside, like I didn't realize this. I was actually in the middle. I'm gonna drop some names, just deal with it. I was actually in the middle of a conversation with Leroy Butler, former Packer great, for the his Hall of Fame induction I did with the 3-point conversion. Bing!
Oh yeah, I know Leroy.
We had the conversation. Super nice guy, by the way. Had a conversation about safeties and linemen being similar in certain particular ways. It's very fascinating, and one of those is that one element of DB commonality is pad manipulation. Now, granted, y'all are a little bit more blatant about it just because of the nature of your surroundings.
Yeah.
But because like if you do a quick tug, that's one thing. If I do a quick tug with a guy that's that close to me trying to get past me, I'm going to give up the rep. But using the other player's pads to your advantage, we have that in common, my friend.
Okay.
Anyways,
I'm here for it.
we mention the offensive side there a bit. I don't think there's any kind of questions as far as the depth. I feel like we know who the top guys who are going to see the field there are. But talk to me a little bit what you saw with the DBs in themselves, because that, to me, them and the linebackers, we'll get to the linebackers in a minute, are the team that I'm more interested to see stack, because there's just been so many changes with the DBs in particular.
Right, and obviously with the scheme. And FYI, shout out Leroy Butler, Jacksonville's own, yeah, or Lee High School. Come on, baby. I had to get that quick shout out. I'm like,
no, I love that you did it.
yes,
I forgot to.
yes. As far as the DBs are concerned, that's gonna be an interesting thing because we've already acknowledged. Hey, man, I was already told by my boy Mike. He's like, hey, man, you have a bias with DBs. You look for someone who's like you, like every other NFL person who's in the media or college person who's in the media. They all have biases. They're always gonna look for guys that's like you were when you played. Steve Smith loves guys who are dogs who block and love to fight. Like that makes sense. I love DBs who have to fight their way into a starting role who may be very fast. For me, that's obviously DeAndre Prince. Like that's why I love him so much, and I'm just waiting to see the things on the field that support my current thoughts on him. So I'm still waiting. That's in the pocket. But he's been solid. He just hasn't been incredible so far. So I don't have the evidence to support it. I'm just saying that's my bias if I have someone who I'm internally rooting for. But if we're talking about the real competition at DB, there's some questions. All right, we have a scheme change with the new DB coach and Chris Richards, and we have the obviously scheme change with Nielsen being the new defensive coordinator. How is Tyson Campbell going to play in this man coverage, in this press man coverage that he essentially hasn't played much of since his college days at Georgia? We knew when he was drafted, he came in and his main opportunity was his ability to turn around and get a hand on the ball when the ball's in the air and staying in phase with the receiver. That's still a question mark. He did have the touchdown given up against BTJ on that magnificent route I was telling you about, and he also should have honestly given up another touchdown on a deep ball that was underthrown by one of the quarterbacks. I just don't remember which quarterback it was. So that question for me is still up in the air because it wasn't the greatest day for him. And as a DB, 2 balls given up, unfortunately, technically speaking, is not a good day. sucks, but that's the role. When both of them are essentially touchdowns. My biggest takeaway, or I should say, my biggest question for the day is really what's that competition is going to look like for that cornerback 4 spot, which is, DeAndre Prince, Christian Broswell, Gregory Jr., Monteric Brown, those guys who we've seen most of those guys in the previous zone defense, but we haven't seen much of them in this press man run with the receiver, defense. It's a different skill set. There's different technical aspects of the game. Well, Monteric Brown showed up, bro. Buster Brown showed up on OTAs day 4 and said, "I ain't playing with y'all. I've been in the weight room." And he had 2 reps within, I don't know, 6 or 7 plays that had me and and Jordan DeLugo for, well, I believe Jen Jag. We were just talking about it and like, oh, okay, I see you, Buster. Like, he's jamming a dude on the line. Parker Washington didn't leave like 2 yards from the line of scrimmage, and then later he did the same thing against a different receiver. And I was like, okay, so Buster's not playing with y'all. He's on that old school Richard Sherman. Okay, I see you. So I'm looking forward to how that's going to shake out, because that was already a really competitive room in the 2023 training camp and OTAs. And it's looking like it's going to shape up to be that same thing. There may be some real tough decisions to be made from this coaching staff.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good problem for them to have. And I'll say this, not to completely, I'm not saying there's nothing to worry about with Tyson Campbell having a bad day like that. Obviously,
no pads on.
As we know all that, no pads, et cetera, et cetera. I think the adjustment to the scheme is important. And you're noticing the guys that are stepping up are either bench players who aren't locked in, the same way that Tyson Campbell is, having to do it play after play after play, getting starting volume reps, having game days, etc. The guys who are less have less muscle memory to it are the ones that are adjusting well, not cheapening their effort either.
Or it could even be guys who have more experience playing in the press man defense in their previous years. That's the other part.
Go there, yeah, great point, excellent point. So yeah, the fact that anybody is stepping up and getting, well, frankly, getting your attention gets my attention. So there's that. and I'll put it this way: if we're falling into the good problem to have scenario of a wealth of depth based on what happened last year, if you remember the Duval Duval, you have to like that too. So
that's fair. And then obviously, we have the whole we have a lot of good position battles. Let's just go through. Let's talk about them if you don't mind.
Take me to the linebackers, man.
Oh wait, the linebackers too. Is that really a battle though?
The reason why I bring it up is I'm hearing an awful lot about Devin Lloyd looking way better and way bigger than he did last year, according to our editors.
Yes.
In the Jaguar Report podcast, bing, John Shipley and Gus Logue. Sure, there was some awkward quote made by your editor, but I won't get into that part of it.
Lord, that man. I don't judge him. When you're doing a live show, sometimes things get said out of context, and people gonna clown you forever. But no, yes, at linebacker, obviously, Josh Allen showed up looking jacked, and that is going to bring some eyes. Oh, okay, yeah, he's looking like he at least about 5-10 pounds heavier, and if you ain't heavier, you wearing it different, for sure. And knowing that he's going to, in this defense, be moved around a lot more, knowing that he's going to be, he may even have to move inside and face some of those guards, maybe face a center here and there, maybe even get some chip blocks inside. Yeah, that's dope that he did put on that weight, that he is looking a little better as far as that's concerned. I don't know what to take from it other than it's always better to look in shape than out of shape, I guess, to put on weight, and especially being in a scheme that's going to have you running around and doing less things in the back end as far as coverage and just moving forward and just dominating. Cool. More I don't know, more abuse on the body. So maybe he'll just wear that better. But as far as the role is concerned, it is what it is. He's going to be blitzing a lot. He's going to be getting at the quarterback. And that's going to be interesting to see, I should say.
By the way, we mentioned the superior Twitter follower on this show already. Mike's in the building. He's over here. He says he's interested to see the adjustment. Some tendency to decide coverages as well. Yeah, and I think that's part of the defensive front and why it's a big deal for me to see Devin Lloyd get beefed up, right? Because something we, and the example I'll use is the historically great Baltimore Ravens never scored defense, right? Ray Lewis, the center of that,
Mm,
as middle linebacker, all of that. Not enough people are talking about Sam Adams and Haloti Ngata. You want to know what made Ray Lewis have such a long career? Not only Sam Adams starting it, so he
yeah,
got hit less, but Haloti Ngata coming in when Ray Lewis said, "Get a D tackle, I'm getting hit too much."
keep those guys off of him. That's
Eric,
fair.
Eric Armstead has a big deal to do with what this disguised front and all these changes will be, because he's going to be that choke point that starts whatever it is they're facing behind there too. And if they're going to maybe send Devin Lloyd more, he better bulk up. So, I mean, if I'm an opposing team hearing about this, if let's say if I'm Miami, I'll be like, interesting, and I'm going to write that down to watch for him attacking the middle in some sort of a disguise
Hmm.
fire situation, perhaps. See
Well,
how educated I sounded for talking defense?
and it's the only reason no one's talking about Arik Armstead right now, or even Mason Smith for that matter, is
Mm,
just because these are the D line guys with no pads on. Unfortunately, the underwear Olympics, this is not your game. We're waiting for your game to come up. The shot put, that's coming when they put pads on. But for the moment, that's the big guy event. But for the moment, we're just talking about the little people event, the marathons, and all of this stuff. That's where we are right now. So when you get with Arik Armstead, it also on OTA 4 was spending time on the sideline with the medical staff for a good portion of practice. So
mhm.
again, you're not going to talk about these guys. He was on the side with Roy Robertson Harris, so you just saw Mason Smith doing a lot of the drills. So if you can get those guys to just attack these gaps as Nielsen likes to do, and just control these gaps, then the linebackers are going to stay free to just clean up, and well, that's a good situation for all of us.
Yeah, and I think I think all that goes in. You mentioned Mason Smith as well. Mike asked the question just as you answered it in the comments here. So yeah, and I mean, heaven forbid, I think the worst case scenario for Mason is that he's a backup for Eric Armstead. You know,
Yeah.
should he need time? Should he need let's just say what is it they say in the NBA? Load management,
Load
right?
management.
Let's see, Eric needs a little load management. Mason Smith will be that, right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
anything from Roy Robertson Harris.
Which
That's
also gives Mason more time, which is beneficial to just get acclimated to the NFL, get acclimated to a new playbook, and more importantly, get more closer to his normal self. Because as we all heard, he was a beast at the last quarter of the season for LSU. He was closer to himself. He was nearly unblockable. And they said the more time that goes on, the closer he looks to his prior self before his injury. Well, why not give the guy some more time with being a backup and having the time to truly just be a rookie and learn, get bigger NFL style, and also make a few plays with his 40% of snaps or whatever it ends up being.
yeah, and 40% is a heck of a volume for a young big man like that there too, for sure.
Yeah.
So let me do this then too, because you were chomping about some position battles. What's the next most compelling one in your mind, sir?
Weirdly, man, because I want to talk about this backup running back thing, but I know yeah, I want to talk about that backup cornerback, and I'm not even going to talk about the safety thing just because I know we'll run out of time because there's so many good ones. For me personally, because I've been chomping at this bit about make ETN great again, I want to know about Brendan Strange versus Josiah Jaguar. That's what I want to know about. I want to know about this tight end 3/H-back role. We saw the highlight with Evan Ingram lined up at fullback. That was on the deep ball to BTJ that everyone's raving about. And that wasn't the only time we saw a fullback presence because we've been talking about this since the middle of last season. As soon as that running game fell off a cliff, it's like, hey, okay, so what's going on with this? What's going on with this offense? The Jaguars were a top team in running 13 personnel in the first half of the season in 2023. And then it fell off when Brendan Strange got hurt. So obviously they want to run a lot more H-back. They may even want to run more fullback situations. And they brought in Jaguar for that reason. What is that going to look like? Is your second round draft pick tight end truly, is that a real competition? What is that going to be? Because at the end of the day, we saw the tape of him when he came back from injury against the Panthers and getting destroyed in the hole on a few different occasions, and we laughed about it. We talked about it. Hey, the tape is what it is.
Mhm.
Is Jaguar going to be stronger at the actual fullback presence? Because if they need someone like that, and I think we do, then who's going to win that? Because that's a second round draft pick, bro.
Well, yeah, let me add you this. Let me add you this there too. I think they were expecting that from Tank Bigsby, and they're obviously not going to get it.
You think they want Tank to be a fullback?
I think when they drafted him, I think there was an element of him playing that role. Yes.
Like interesting second bat sets, having both him and ETN on the field at the same time, and him blocking and whatever else.
Or at least showing somebody who would block and maybe giving him the ball on occasion. He was supposed to be the dude that would show an inside the tackle threat to leave NTN the opportunity to go outside. Because remember, the whole reason the running game failed is the outside run became predictable, and teams that normally couldn't stop it did because they didn't care about Fortner. Or
they couldn't run inside. You're right.
The interior. When you blow up the interior, you cannot run the ball.
I mean, that's fair, but it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Again, if Strange is healthy and they're able to actually run the ball inside just a little bit better with Morris being there, because as me O'Brien pointed out on, I believe it was Tuesday, hey, Doug drafted Mitch Morris, which I wasn't even aware of that part. I got that straight over my head. I'm like, oh, really? No, he drafted him. He was there early in Kansas City. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I didn't even know that. All right, that sells me on that pick. So if you're able to just adequately run the ball inside, and that the outside run is not as predictable, then them using that same 13 personnel might be adequate. It may not be the best running game in the NFL, but it'll be good enough to keep this top 6, top 7 passing game moving along, chugging along. So I am here for that. And I am still curious about how Nielsen's going to use Antonio Johnson versus Darnell Savage. We've already been told originally that Savage was going to be that nickelback, and then they actually got what I would consider a real nickelback or true nickelback in Jarian Jones. And boy, oh boy, OTA number 4, that boy was all over the field. Like
we loved that pick when it happened too, Travis.
Yeah, I loved it when it happened, and I loved it more after seeing it. Pass breakup, like 4 incompletions overall. It was just sticky coverage. I'm here for that, man. But yeah, so because you have that, then there's some questions on what does Savage mean. Like he gives you the ability to be more multiple back there, because now you have all these billions of different packages. But what does that mean for Antonio Johnson versus him? Is Antonio just going to just transform into a developmental guy behind Savage? And what is that?
A bad thing. I think Antonio has a future.
Absolutely.
So, let's get this in here, because I mean, man, Mike knows how to push my buttons. There will not be any Mac Jones breakdowns on this show. No.
Yeah, there is a quarterback competition though. CJ Beathard versus Mac Jones. That's the competition.
Oh,
that's the competition, and we don't know how that's going to end, because we already know Trevor loves CJ, but I mean the team traded a pick for Mac, so I don't know if all 3 of those guys are going to be on the roster. We'll see.
Yeah, and then I mean, here's Mike stepping in, talking about just what we've been talking about for a minute. You'll see elements of that in the article I had on Jaguar Report. Bing, mega. There you go. Is got to make that part of that Make NTN campaign, Make NTN Great Again campaign. So thank you for your support on that, Mike, 100%.
And while we're running down on time, I know we don't have time to talk about it, but at least I still wanted to mention again the Dearness Johnson versus Tank Bisbee RB2 competition.
The challenge. What are you doing?
I see it as a competition. If Tank Tank is not improved, I'm sorry, I'm going to call it what it is. I don't think it should be a competition, but I think it will be a competition if this coaching staff is actually taking a close eye on everything.
I think you're mishearing me. This isn't a competition, because Dearness Johnson already has the job if I'm the coach. What battle you talk about? Tank needs to battle spot 3.
Tank has to, if you're talking about earning it, I think Dearness has done more to earn it than Tank. Tank has earned it by being a 2nd-round draft pick, and nothing more, in my personal opinion.
I guess this thing is controversial, but I don't think it is, man. I loved the acquisition of Dearness Johnson from moment 1. The only criticism I have is, why would you do that when you drafted Tank? And then Tank showed us why. So.
And then we have Javon Foster versus the Walker Little, situation, that swing tackle. That's obviously got to be a conversation. And finally, we got the Tyler Shatley versus Luke Fortner for the backup center competition that no one's talking about, even though Mitch Morris has had 6 concussions in 8 years. I'm sorry, we got to talk about this. Like, maybe not today, but that's a conversation that needs to be had.
We'll open with that next week. Oh, lineman talk. Let's bring it. Anyways, Travis Holmes, tell the world.
You can find all of my writings covering the Jacksonville Jaguars at bighatcountry.com. Save it as a favorite. Check it out. We cover all the press conferences. We cover the OTAs, training camp, uh, big game breakdowns, play breakdowns, analysis, everything, man. Just save it as a favorite. Hit me up on all the socials, Travis D. Holmes. You'll see me here every week wherever you catch a podcast, the Duval Jaguars podcast, and also on the South Florida Tribune, Inside the Pigskin. That is on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Sir, where can you be found?
I can be found in my happy place. Mike is officially a celebrity here on this show. Our first hashtag mega in the comments.
That's what I'm talking about. Mike, my boy.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, Mike. Appreciate you. Of course, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my writings with the Jaguar Report, the 3-point conversion, and the black and gold banneret, as well as my work covering the Orlando Magic with ASMBN Sports. And check out my weekly show, The Student of the Game, 9 p.m. Eastern time. There's an NBA Finals coming up here. There's an NHL Final coming up here. Lord Stanley's Cup and the Orion Trophy. All of it's going on. It's going to be a great time. We'll be talking about it. Also, the Orlando Sentinel's head college football writer, Matt Marshall, coming in not only to talk about the new Madden video game that they made just down the street here in Maitland, maybe you heard a little bit about that, but also to bring some knowledge to what the hell is going on in college football. Paying payers directly is now on the table. I needed to be educated that time, as I always am when Matt Marshall comes in. I play the role as the student, so check out all of that. But listen, an honor, joy, and privilege to come aboard. Thanks again to all of our commenters, especially my barber coming in with the hashtag mega. You, sir, are a champion for doing precisely that. But until next time, my friends, class dismissed.